I sat there in that sleek, glass-walled conference room, the quiet hum of the city outside barely touching the tense air inside. Mason Hale, the COO, and Delia from HR were seated across from me, their eyes flicking between their phones and the papers in front of them. It felt like an execution, like they were reading a script they'd rehearsed but couldn't quite deliver with sincerity. I had worked at Crestford Communications for over 20 years. I built the brand, nurtured relationships, made sure that every press release had that perfect balance of impact and grace. But now as I sat there, I felt like a stranger in my own company. Martha, as you know, we're undergoing a corporate refresh, Mason said, his voice flat, without any real emotion. Part of that involves some tough decisions, and today, unfortunately, we're having to phase out your role. For a moment, I thought I misheard him. Phase me out? I had been the backbone of this company. It was my strategies that turned this place from a fledgling PR agency into a force to be reckoned with. And now, after all this time, I was just being phased out. Delia shifted in her chair, a faint look of discomfort flashing across her face. "We're bringing in Jenna Vale to take over your position," she added. "She's a junior associate, but..." "But what?" I interjected, my voice cutting through the sterile air. My pulse quickened. I could feel the weight of betrayal sinking in deeper with each word. "Well, Jenna's got a lot of potential, and she's really plugged into the current trends," Mason continued, leaning forward slightly, as if trying to convince himself more than me. "She's better at navigating the new corporate dynamics, the changing environment, better at navigating the politics," I thought. Jenna Vale, a junior associate who could barely hold her own in a meeting without looking to me for guidance, was somehow deemed the right choice. She was the younger, trendier version of me, the one who could play the game, say the right words in the right rooms, and make everyone feel heard. But me, I had never played the game. I had built something real, something that didn't need to rely on buzzwords or flashy presentations. My work spoke for itself, but I guess in the world Mason and Delia were creating, the work didn't matter anymore. Politics did. I forced a smile, even though inside, I was crumbling. "So that's it?" I asked, my voice steady. "You're just going to replace me with someone who can't even come close to my skill set, but she's got the right vibe?" Mason's eyes darted toward Delia. There was an unspoken agreement between them, a mutual understanding that I was no longer needed. "It's not personal," Delia said quickly, as if that would make it better. "It's just part of the corporate restructuring." I stood up, my hands gripping the edge of the table. I wasn't going to beg, I wasn't going to plead for a place in this company. Instead, I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and turned to leave. "No send-off?" I asked, almost too quietly. Mason looked at me, a glimmer of guilt in his eyes. We thought it'd be better if you just took some time for yourself." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I walked out of that conference room with my head held high, but my heart was shattered. As I passed through the office, I noticed the looks people were giving me, furtive, avoiding my gaze. They had already erased me. I had already been replaced. The doors of Crestford Communications, the company I helped build, swung open behind me, and I walked out into the street, leaving it all behind. But even as the glass doors closed behind me, I couldn't help but feel that the worst part wasn't being fired. It was the fact that, in their eyes, I had become invisible. I barely remembered the drive home. The streets blurred, the familiar sights of the city slipping past as I kept my hands firmly on the wheel, knuckles white. The air outside was heavy with the onset of a summer storm, but inside, I felt like I was suffocating, drowning in the emptiness that now surrounded me. The silence in my apartment hit me the moment I walked through the door. The kind of silence that makes you feel like you've lost something you can't get back, even though you don't know what it is. My apartment, which once felt like a cozy retreat from the madness of the office, now felt like a foreign place. The walls, once warm and familiar, seemed distant, as if they were mocking me for thinking I had a place in the world outside of Crestford. I tossed my purse onto the counter and wandered into the living room. The sleek, minimalist decor that I had carefully curated now seemed like a facade, all of it empty, unimportant. I caught sight of the calendar on the wall, still marked with the boardroom meetings I would never attend, the deadlines I had once set but now meant nothing. Everything on that calendar had been my responsibility, my world. A small glass of wine sat on the counter, a remnant of an unfinished evening. I poured myself a full glass, needing something to fill the void. As I took a long sip, I felt the warmth of the alcohol spread through me, but it didn't ease the tension coiling in my chest. I picked up my phone, absently scrolling through the endless barrage of emails. Some were business related, others simply junk. But one message caught my eye. Jenna Vale had updated her LinkedIn profile to announce her new position at Crestford Communications. My stomach twisted into a tight knot. The cold, clinical words on the screen cut through me like a blade. Excited to be joining Crestford Communications as Senior Account Director. Stepping into a new chapter in my career, I knew her. Jenna, with her perfect smile and polished words, had been the one to sit in on all the big meetings, nodding at the right moments, laughing at the right jokes, all the while silently plotting her way to the top. She hadn't worked her ass off like I had. She'd just known how to play the game, how to kiss the right asses and make sure her name stayed in the right conversations. And now she was taking my place. I set my phone down, suddenly aware of how little space there was left in my apartment, how little space there was left in my life for anything but the office, for the company, for them. I took another sip of wine, staring at the empty calendar hanging on the wall. It was as if I had just been erased, no longer needed in the place I had spent decades of my life. But the real kicker? I realized it hadn't happened overnight. This was the culmination of months, hell, years, of being pushed aside. The phone calls, the meetings, the subtle comments made by people who had started to forget what I had contributed. They hadn't needed me anymore, and I hadn't even noticed. I had spent so much time investing in that company, in them, that I had let my own world slip away piece by piece. I had been sidelined without realizing it, quietly removed from my own life. I let out a long breath, staring at the muted glow of the city lights outside my window. I used to dream about what would come after Crestford, what I'd do when I had the time and space to think about me instead of them. But now? Now I wasn't sure what was left. The wine glass felt heavier in my hand, its contents no longer offering any comfort. I set it down, suddenly feeling sick to my stomach. Maybe it was the realization that I had given everything to something that had discarded me the moment it no longer found me useful. Or maybe it was the quiet panic creeping in, the unknown that suddenly loomed ahead of me. I glanced at my phone again. The LinkedIn notification from Jenna was still there, but I couldn't bring myself to look at it any longer. I grabbed my coat from the hook, pulled the door open, and stepped out into the rain. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to be anywhere. Maybe that was the first step. It was 2 days after the meeting with Mason and Delia that my phone started buzzing nonstop. At first, I thought it was just the usual business emails, the ones I'd already been ignoring. But then I noticed the name on the screen, Monica Reeves. Monica was the CEO of a major health media empire, one of Crestford's biggest clients. I had worked with her for years, and in all that time, she had never once called me outside of business hours. I swiped the screen, my heart racing. "Hey, Nora, I just heard the news. What in the hell is going on over there?" Monica's voice crackled through the speaker, tight with disbelief. I don't know yet, Monica," I replied, struggling to keep the quiver out of my voice. "I wasn't expecting this either, just trying to figure it out." "You're kidding, right? You're the reason we stuck around with Crestford all these years. I don't know what they're thinking, but we can't move forward without you. I'll pull our account tomorrow if they try to replace you. It's non-negotiable." My chest tightened. Hearing those words, non-negotiable, felt like a lifeline in the sea of uncertainty I had been drowning in for the last 48 hours. She wasn't the only one, though. As the afternoon wore on, the calls came flooding in, one after the other. There was Monica, then Valerie from Transmed Solutions, another high-profile client, then Marissa, the communications director for a fast-growing biotech firm. They were all the same, angry, confused, and offering me the same promise. If they couldn't work with me, they'd walk. I sat in my apartment, the phone glued to my ear, trying to keep up with the influx of messages. Part of me couldn't believe it was happening. These were the same clients I had fought for, sacrificed for, worked around the clock for, and now they were rallying around me, threatening to leave the firm if I wasn't reinstated. My head was spinning, and I knew the story was spreading quickly through the industry. Word of my firing was bound to get out, and with it, the realization that Crestford Communications wasn't the company it had once been. I felt an overwhelming mix of vindication and unease. The truth was staring me in the face, but it was only bringing more chaos. The next call came from Trisha, my former assistant at Crestford. Her voice was frantic, the words tumbling out before I could even say hello. "Nora, you won't believe this. Jenna Vale is already screwing things up. She can't even handle our biggest accounts. The team's freaking out. Everyone's looking at each other like they're waiting for you to come back and fix it all." A part of me wanted to laugh. I could imagine it. The corporate refresh had gone horribly wrong. Jenna might have been well versed in office politics, but she couldn't hold a candle to the relationships I had built, the trust I had earned over years of hard work. My clients weren't just paying for a service, they were paying for me. I had been the face they knew, the one who understood their needs, who anticipated their moves before they even made them. I can't believe they didn't realize this would happen, Trisha continued, her frustration palpable. We're losing everything. People are talking about jumping ship to other firms, people who have the right vision for the future. Without you, it's a mess. I rubbed my temples, trying to ground myself. I wasn't even sure what I was feeling anymore. There was relief, yes, but there was also the crushing weight of guilt. Guilt that maybe I should have fought harder, stayed longer, done more to stop this from happening. Then, an unexpected text buzzed on my phone. Elliot Crane, the founder of Crestford Communications. He had been largely absent in the last few years, delegating more and more to Mason, but he had always been the one who knew how to make the firm feel like a family, a real family. Let's talk. I know what's happening, and I'm not happy about it. Call me tonight when you can. I stared at the message, an uneasy knot forming in my stomach. Elliot had always been the visionary behind Crestford, the one who had set the company on a course toward greatness. But the company had changed in ways he hadn't anticipated, and I wasn't sure what kind of conversation we were about to have. I set the phone down, still reeling from the storm that had erupted in the wake of my dismissal. I thought about the clients, the team, the mess Jenna was already making, and realized with startling clarity that I had been more than just a cog in the machine. I was the glue that had held everything together, whether anyone had recognized it or not. And now, the firm was unraveling without me. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email from an internal Crestford account. It was a message I wasn't expecting. We've received several formal complaints about the handling of accounts after your departure. Please review immediately. It was a reminder that this was no longer just about me or my clients. It was about a company trying to hold on to something it was quickly losing. A company that had failed to see my value until it was too late. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of the situation. For the first time, I didn't feel like the one who had been left behind. I was the one who had been right all along. As I scrolled through the messages and prepared for my conversation with Elliot, I realized that for once, I wasn't afraid of the future. I was ready to fight for what was mine. The call from Elliot came later that night. I had already spent the better part of the day scrolling through emails, taking calls from clients who were demanding answers I didn't have yet. The more I listened to their concerns, the more I realized just how crucial my role had been at Crestford. But still, I wasn't sure if that made me feel better or worse. When my phone rang and I saw Elliot's name flash across the screen, I felt a surge of something. Nervousness, excitement, maybe even anger. It had been a long time since I'd heard from him personally. I hit the green button and put the phone to my ear. Elliot. Nora, he said, his voice still carrying the weight of the authority he used to have. But there was something else there too. Frustration, maybe regret. I've been following what's been happening, and I think we need to talk. Agreed, I said flatly. I wasn't sure where this conversation was going to go, but I knew exactly how I felt. He let out a sigh. This whole thing, it wasn't supposed to happen like this. You were never supposed to be let go. You've built this place, Nora. You were Crestford. You know that, right? I could feel the familiar tug of nostalgia, the belief that Crestford had once been a company that mattered, that it was about more than just the business side of things, that it had soul. But that was before everything changed. Before Mason and the board started pushing things in a direction that left little room for authenticity. I know, I said, my voice steady. But the truth is, Elliot, it was always going to end this way. I've been sidelined for months. The firm doesn't care about the things I care about anymore. You and I both know that. There was a long pause on the other end, and for a moment, I thought he might hang up. But Elliot had always been a man of pride and principle, and I knew he would never just walk away from something he had built, something he had always fought for. I didn't know it had gotten this bad, he said softly, almost regretfully. If I'd known, I would have done something sooner. I should have done something sooner. I didn't let myself soften. Not this time. It's not just your fault, Elliot. It's been a slow bleed. The writing was on the wall the day Mason started making decisions without consulting the people who mattered. The ones who actually made this company what it is. I paused. I was just the last one to get the memo. He let out a sharp breath. So what now, Nora? I've got a team working to fix things internally. But I need you, Nora. The clients need you. Can we walk this back? We'll offer you a title, a new position, something that will make this all go away. I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. This was it, wasn't it? The same move that Crestford always made. Shiny, glittering offers. A way to paper over the cracks. A way to make the bad taste of betrayal go down just a little easier. I don't think you understand, Elliot, I said, my tone colder now. It's not about a title. It's not about a new office, a bigger paycheck, or whatever corporate band-aid you're offering. It's about respect. You can't just erase me from the story like I never existed. He was silent for a beat, and when he spoke again, his voice was low. I don't want to erase you. I don't want this to end like this. I closed my eyes, shaking my head, even though he couldn't see me. You let it happen. You let it become this, by standing back and watching it all unfold. You let Mason take control of something we both built, and now it's crumbling because of it. I paused, the weight of the words hanging between us. I'm not coming back. Not like this. I can't. Not when it means I have to forget everything I stood for. There was a long, heavy silence, and for a moment, I wasn't sure if Elliot was going to say anything more. But then, his voice broke through, quieter now, almost defeated. You're really done then? I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Yeah, I'm done. There was no pleading, no bargaining on his end. He had no more words left. It was as if the finality in my voice had struck him mute. I get it, he said after a long pause, his voice filled with the kind of resignation that comes with knowing the damage is already done. You'll always have a place here, Nora. If you change your mind... I shook my head, though he couldn't see it. I'm not changing my mind. I've been trying to be someone else for so long, someone who fit the vision of what this place was supposed to be, but it's not my vision anymore. I've spent too much time letting them define me. There was another beat of silence, and when Elliot spoke again, there was something different in his voice. You're right. I don't know how this will all turn out, but I know that whatever you do, you're going to do it on your terms. His words hung in the air for a moment, but I didn't feel the weight of them as I should have. Instead, all I felt was the strange calm of having made my decision. For the first time, I wasn't trying to fix someone else's mess. I was ready to create my own. I'll see you around, Elliot, I said, my voice final. He didn't respond, and for a moment, I wondered if he had already hung up. But just before I could end the call, I heard him speak one last time. Good luck, Nora. You deserve it. I hung up, staring at my phone for a moment longer than I needed to, as if waiting for something, someone, to make me second-guess myself. But no one came. No more offers, no more corporate promises, just me. For the first time in years, I felt lighter. It was time to walk away completely, not just from Crestford, but from the person I had been in that space. The person who thought she had to please everyone. Now it was time for me to carve my own path. And no one was going to stop me. The next few days passed in a blur of phone calls, emails, and quiet reflection. I had made my choice, but the weight of it still sat heavily on my shoulders. Walking away from Crestford was one thing. Walking away from a life I had built around that company was another. I knew that this was the moment to decide what came next. I didn't have a plan, at least not one I was ready to admit to myself, but I knew something had to change. I couldn't just go back to the same cycle, to the same grind of being a cog in someone else's machine. Not after everything I'd built, everything I'd sacrificed. Then, 2 days after I'd made the call to Elliot, my phone rang again. I glanced at the screen. It was Simone Danner, an executive recruiter I had met years ago. We'd had a few conversations over the years, mostly casual check-ins, never anything serious. But I knew enough to recognize the significance of a call from her now. Hi, Nora, she said, her voice as calm and measured as ever. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. I smiled faintly, sitting down on the couch and rubbing my temples. Not at all, Simone. What's up? I've been following your situation with Crestford, she said, cutting to the chase as she always did. And I think I have an opportunity that could be of interest to you. My heart skipped a beat, but I kept my voice steady. Go on. There's a firm I'm working with, Beckmore Strategies. They're looking for someone to lead a major restructuring initiative. They want someone with experience in PR, leadership, and... She paused for a second. Someone who can handle the shifting dynamics of this industry. I sat up straighter. Beckmore Strategies. The name alone sent a ripple of recognition through me. It was one of the most prestigious firms in the business, a company with a reputation for doing things the right way, the real way. Why me? I asked, genuinely curious. They're looking for someone who isn't just focused on the next deal, Nora. They want someone who has a vision, someone who can help shape the future, not just manage the present. Her voice softened a little. They've done their research, and they think you're the person who can lead them into the next chapter. I felt a flicker of hope in the pit of my stomach, something I hadn't felt in days. But there was still hesitation. That sounds amazing, Simone, but I'm not sure I'm ready to dive back into something like that right away. I understand, she said, her tone shifting to one of understanding. But I'm not just talking about taking a job. They're offering you something far more significant, a chance to build something from the ground up. You won't just be joining a team, Nora, you'll be shaping it. The words hit me like a shockwave, shaping it. The idea that I could lead, that I could create something entirely new, something with real purpose, was terrifying and exhilarating. It was the opportunity I had longed for without even knowing it. I leaned back against the couch, letting the silence settle between us as I processed what she was offering. It was everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built up in my mind but hadn't been able to articulate. It was a chance to step out of the shadow of Crestford and finally create something that felt authentic to me. I'm listening, I said, my voice suddenly feeling firmer, steadier. Simone gave a quiet, satisfied laugh. I knew you'd be interested. I'd like to set up a meeting with Marion Clark, Beckmore's managing partner. She's the one who really wants to talk to you. I think you'll find her vision aligns with yours. I'd like that, I said, my heart thumping in my chest. I think I'm ready to hear more. Good. I'll have Marion reach out to you directly. In the meantime, Nora, just think about it. This isn't just another job offer. It's the chance to build something meaningful. After the call ended, I sat in silence for a while, the weight of the decision I had to make suddenly feeling lighter. For the first time in days, I felt something akin to excitement building in me. I could see the possibility. I could see the future. The phone buzzed again, another text from Simone confirming the meeting details. But even as the excitement grew, something else tugged at the edge of my mind. I couldn't stop thinking about Crestford, about the company I had helped elevate, about the people I had trusted. But then I thought about Mason's cold dismissal, about Jenna Vale, and about the hollow promises Elliot had made. And I realized for the first time that I was finally ready to let go. I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. Whatever came next, I was going to do it on my terms. The meeting with Marion Clark was set for the following Tuesday. But even as I prepared for it, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I was about to change everything, not just for myself, but for the industry, for the people who had built their lives around the company I had left behind. Marion Clark was nothing like the typical corporate partners I had worked with in the past. She wasn't polished to the point of being artificial, like so many others I had crossed paths with. No, she had a presence that demanded attention, not through arrogance, but through a quiet, undeniable strength. It wasn't about appearances with her, it was about vision. The morning of the meeting, I dressed carefully, sharp but not too polished, a mixture of business and confidence that felt like a suit of armor for the conversation ahead. Beckmore Strategies wasn't some place I was going to dip my toes into. This was where I was going to plant my flag. I arrived at their headquarters a little early, just as the sun was starting to pour through the glass of the skyscraper. The lobby was sleek, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city. I waited in the lounge area, sipping water and watching people walk past in their business suits, their hurried conversations making the space feel alive with possibility. When Marion appeared, I immediately recognized her, not just because of her striking presence, but because I could see something in her face that echoed my own feelings. Determination, but with a quiet depth that suggested she wasn't in it for the short-term game. She extended her hand, her grip firm, her eyes meeting mine with an intensity I couldn't quite place. "Good to finally meet you, Nora," she said, her voice smooth but no nonsense. "I've heard a lot about you." "Likewise," I replied, offering a smile that was more of a test than an invitation. I wasn't sure how this was going to go, but I had learned long ago that the best way to make a real connection in these situations was to keep my guard up until I knew exactly who I was dealing with. We moved into her office, a spacious corner room that overlooked the city, the view as commanding as the space itself. Marion walked around the desk and gestured to the chair across from her. "Please, have a seat." I sat down, crossing my legs and folding my hands in my lap. I was used to this game, the posturing, the questions, the dance. But this time, I wasn't here to impress. I was here to see if Beckmore could offer me something I could believe in. "So," Marian began, sitting down across from me, her expression thoughtful. I know you've been through a lot recently. I also know that you have a unique perspective on the PR industry, on leadership, and on how things should be done. I'm not interested in hiring you for your title or your resume. I'm interested in hiring you for your vision. I tilted my head slightly, intrigued. She wasn't wasting any time. I appreciate that, I said, keeping my tone even, but internally, I was sizing her up. What exactly are you looking for, Marian? Her gaze sharpened, and I could see the spark of something fierce in her eyes. I'm not looking to fix what's broken, Nora. I'm looking to build something new, something meaningful. Beckmore has always been a leader in strategy, but I think we've lost sight of what really makes a firm stand out. We've been playing the same game everyone else is playing, chasing the next big account, trying to fit in with the trends of the moment. I nodded slowly, the truth of her words landing deep inside me. I'm tired of the trends too. I want someone who isn't afraid to make the tough calls, she continued, her voice firm. Someone who can help lead us into the future, without the fear of losing relevance. Someone who will rebuild this place from the inside out, based on authenticity and relationships, not the bottom line. I was silent for a moment, letting her words sink in. This wasn't just a job offer, it was a challenge. The kind of challenge I had been waiting for without even realizing it. And what exactly do you want me to do? I asked, my voice low, almost a challenge in itself. You're asking me to rebuild something, but I don't just want to fit in with the current landscape. I want to reshape it. Marian leaned forward slightly, a smile pulling at the corners of her mouth. Exactly. I want you to help me take Beckmore's strategies, with all its strengths and flaws, and turn it into something people look up to. Something people want to be a part of. Not because we have the biggest clients or the best contracts, but because we're doing something real, something authentic. I leaned back in my chair, absorbing her words. It wasn't just about being part of something bigger, it was about creating that thing from the ground up. This was more than a job. This was a chance to prove that leadership, integrity, and vision could still matter in a world where business had become a game of survival rather than growth. I'm not interested in just being an employee, I said slowly, meeting her gaze directly. If I take this position, I want full control over the integration, over the company's culture. I want to make sure we're not just rebuilding for the future. We're building with the future in mind, from the inside out. If I'm coming in, I want to be a partner, not a puppet. Marian didn't flinch. In fact, her eyes seemed to light up at my words. She sat back in her chair, a rare, almost impressed smile crossing her face. I like that. I need someone who doesn't just accept the status quo, someone who's willing to shake things up. I think you're exactly what Beckmore needs. We sat there for a long moment, both of us absorbing what was being said, the weight of the decision settling in. I'll make this official, Marian said finally, standing up and walking to the desk. But I want you to understand, Nora, this isn't just about fixing a firm. This is about changing the way the entire industry thinks about leadership, about what it means to truly be a leader. I stood up, extending my hand to her, the finality of the decision already surging through me. Let's do it. Marian shook my hand firmly, a knowing smile on her lips. Welcome to Beckmore, Nora. Let's change the game. As I left the meeting, walking out into the crisp air of the city, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Certainty. This was where I was meant to be. This wasn't just about rebuilding my career. This was about rebuilding everything. A new vision, a new future. And this time, I wasn't going to do it alone. 2 months had passed since that meeting with Marian. Beckmore's strategies had been everything I hoped for, and more. I had the creative freedom to build something real, something that reflected the values I had always believed in. The culture was shifting. We were more than just a team. We were a collective with a shared vision. But the time had come to do something I never thought I would have to do. I had orchestrated the deal in secret, quietly, without the knowledge of Crestford's leadership. Beckmore had acquired Crestford Communications, not out of revenge, not to destroy what had once been, but to rebuild it from the ground up, something that mattered, something with heart. No more playing by the corporate playbook. This time, we were writing our own. I stood in front of the Crestford building on the day we were to officially take over. The familiar glass and steel structure loomed in front of me, a reminder of the place I'd helped build and the place that had unceremoniously cast me aside. The building had been a symbol of success, but now it felt like an empty shell, stripped of its soul. I was about to walk in, not as an ex-employee, but as the new owner. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out. A text from Marian popped up. Remember, this isn't about revenge. This is about vision. I smiled, reading the message over again. It was true. As much as I had been wronged, this wasn't a chance to tear them down. It was a chance to rebuild, to make them see what they had lost in their pursuit of the next big thing. The doors to the building slid open, and I stepped inside. The security guard at the front desk gave me a knowing nod as I walked past. The familiarity of it almost made me freeze. I had walked through these halls countless times, always with purpose. Now I had a new purpose, one that would change everything. I made my way to the elevator, and when the doors opened on the top floor, I was greeted with a silence that felt heavier than before. The same open-plan office, the same long glass windows overlooking the city. But there was a ghostly quality to it now, as if the energy that once made it a thriving workspace had been sucked dry. People were moving around, but there was no real direction, no life. I walked past the rows of desks, my footsteps echoing in the empty space. I headed straight for Mason's office. I knew he'd be here, the COO, who had played the corporate game better than anyone else. He was the reason Crestford had lost its way. I was about to confront him, and in doing so, confront everything that had gone wrong. The door to Mason's office was closed, but I didn't knock. I opened it without hesitation. He looked up from his desk, startled, but quickly masked his surprise with a forced smile. "Nora," he said, his voice colder than I remembered. "Didn't expect to see you here?" I couldn't stop myself from smiling. "Well, Mason, it's funny how things work out, isn't it?" The tension in the room was palpable. I could see the way his shoulders stiffened, the subtle flick of his eyes toward the window, as if he were calculating how much damage this was going to cause. "Come to see how the other half lives?" he asked, his words coated with thinly veiled disdain. I stepped closer to the desk, my eyes locking onto his. "Actually, I came to let you know that you're officially out of a job." His jaw tightened, but he didn't say anything right away. I could tell he was trying to keep his composure. "What are you talking about?" he finally asked, though I could see the unease behind his eyes. "I'm talking about the fact that Beckmore Strategies just acquired Crestford Communications," I said, my voice steady. "You're officially out, Mason. I'm here to finish what I started." He stood up abruptly, the chair scraping across the floor. "You can't just— This isn't how this works, Nora. You can't just come in here and take everything." "I'm not taking anything," I said, my voice low, calm. "I'm giving it back. Giving this company back what it lost when people like you started thinking it was all about the money and the trends." Mason's face twisted with frustration, and I saw the first crack in his usually confident facade. He stepped toward me, his fists clenched at his sides. "You think you can do better? You think people will follow you? You were never meant for this, Nora. You're a relic. This place needs fresh, new ideas, not someone who's stuck in the past." I held his gaze without flinching. "That's the problem, Mason. You never realized that the people who built this company weren't just chasing trends. They were making something real, something lasting. And now it's time to bring that back." He took a step back, his eyes narrowing. "You'll regret this," he spat, his words dripping with venom. "You'll see. This company will fall apart without me." I shook my head slowly. "Number. It's already falling apart because of people like you. You built a house of cards, Mason. All it took was one gust of wind to knock it all down." Before he could respond, I turned to leave. The door clicked shut behind me with a finality that felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. I walked down the hall, my heart pounding in my chest, but there was no fear, no second guessing. This was it. I was taking the first step in reclaiming something that was mine, not out of revenge, but out of necessity. As I made my way to the main conference room, I could feel eyes on me. It wasn't just the staff. It was everyone who had once seen me as a cog in the machine, someone who existed to make the company look good, but never quite fit in. Today, I was the one in control. I stepped into the conference room, where the rest of the team was already gathering. The employees looked at me with a mix of uncertainty and curiosity, waiting for me to speak. I wasn't there to make promises. I wasn't there to explain myself. I was there to lead. I took a deep breath, looked around the room, and finally spoke. It's time to build something real again. Something that doesn't rely on trends or office politics. Something that values people, relationships, and authenticity over everything else. I know I wasn't part of this place for the last few months, but I'm here now. And together, we're going to make Crestford Communications into something that actually matters. The room was silent for a moment, but then, slowly, the tension began to break. I could see the staff exchanging glances, their expressions softening. They hadn't been erased yet. They still had a chance. And so did I. In that moment, I knew. I wasn't just reclaiming my job, I was reclaiming the soul of this company. This wasn't just the beginning of a new chapter for Crestford, it was the beginning of something better. The air in the room felt thick with tension when Elliot walked in. There was no mistaking the man who had once been the visionary behind Crestford Communications. Tall, sharp features, his presence immediately commanding. But today, there was a weariness in his eyes, a sense of someone who knew the world was shifting around him, and he wasn't sure he could stop it. I had invited him to meet with me. He was the one person from the old guard I still respected, despite everything that had happened. But this conversation wouldn't be easy. It was time to face the truth. The future of Crestford wasn't just mine to shape, it was a shared history, and it included him. We met in the conference room of the newly restructured Beckmore offices, overlooking the skyline. The city buzzed below, oblivious to the quiet storm that was unfolding inside. Elliot sat across from me, his gaze steady but cautious. He had always been someone who kept his emotions in check, but I could sense his discomfort. The firm he had built was no longer his. It wasn't just a new management structure, it was a different vision altogether, one that didn't fit with his. I thought we were going to talk about how things could be fixed, Elliot said, his voice calm but tinged with a note of exhaustion. But I get it now. You're not here to fix anything. No, I said quietly, meeting his eyes. I'm not here to fix anything, Elliot. I'm here to tell you that it's time to step aside. He blinked, caught off guard by the bluntness of my words. Step aside? I built this company, Nora. I built it from nothing. And you? I know what you built, I interrupted, my voice unwavering. And I respect it. I do. But the problem is, you stopped building. You let people like Mason take control, and they turned everything into a machine, a soulless corporate entity. You let them strip the heart out of what we created. His face hardened at my words, but there was a flicker of recognition behind his eyes. He knew I was right. He had let the company he built slip away into the hands of people who valued power over purpose, politics over passion. I never wanted it to go this way, he said, his voice more subdued now. But I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know how to fight them. You think I didn't see what was happening? I've been fighting Mason and the others in my own way, but I couldn't keep up. It's always been about the next big thing for them, not the work we put in. I leaned forward, letting my words hang in the air. You didn't fight, Elliot. You let them take over. You let the corporate machine decide everything. And now, this place is a shell of what it used to be. He sighed heavily, looking out the window for a moment, his shoulders slumping, as if the weight of everything finally caught up with him. I'm sorry. I should have done more. But it wasn't just Mason and the others. It was me too. I wanted to preserve what we had, but I didn't know how to navigate the changes. I thought the company could still survive on its own. I nodded slowly, feeling the years of frustration that had been building inside me start to release. Survival isn't the point, Elliot. It never was. You taught me that. But it's not enough to just survive anymore. We have to build something that matters, something that will last. And to do that, we need to let go of the past. Elliot turned back to me, his eyes searching mine as if trying to gauge whether I was speaking from anger or truth. I could see it now. He was letting go, slowly, almost unwillingly, but the realization was there. I wasn't asking him to step aside for me. I was asking him to let the company evolve, to trust that what we had together could still be carried forward, just in a different way. I can't just walk away, Nora, he said, his voice almost pleading. This is my legacy. It's everything I've worked for. And you've left a hell of a legacy, I replied, my tone softening. But it's not about your legacy anymore. It's about the firm's legacy. And you have to let go of the reins if you want that to survive. I can't do this alone, but I can't do it with you either if you're going to hold on to what's left of the past. He sat back, his face softening as he absorbed my words. For the first time in years, I saw the vulnerability in him, the man who had once been untouchable, the man who had built this company, but had failed to see that it was time for something new. I don't know how to step aside, he murmured, almost to himself. You don't have to know how. Just trust me, and trust that the people who believe in this company will help carry it forward, I said firmly. You've already given it everything. Now, let it be something else. Something more than just a company. Elliot nodded slowly, the weight of the decision finally settling in his expression. I never thought it would end this way, he said quietly. But I get it now. I'll sign whatever you need me to sign. It's time for me to let go. The silence in the room was heavy, but it wasn't uncomfortable. For the first time, it felt like we were both releasing the past, both finally ready to let go. Thank you, Elliot, I said quietly, my voice filled with a mixture of gratitude and relief. You don't know what this means. He gave me a small, almost wistful smile. I think I do. As he stood to leave, the finality of the moment hung between us, but there was no bitterness, no anger, just the quiet understanding that this was how it had to be. As the door closed behind him, I sat back in my chair, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. I had done it. I had confronted the past, and now I was free to build the future. And it felt like I was finally stepping into the role I was meant to play all along. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I knew one thing for sure. I was no longer running from the past. I was finally ready to lead. 6 months had passed since that pivotal conversation with Elliot, and everything had changed. Everything. Crestford Communications, now part of Beckmore Strategies, was unrecognizable. The old corporate hierarchy had been dismantled, replaced by a culture of openness, transparency, and respect. I had finally stepped into the role I had always envisioned for myself, but the journey hadn't been easy. The transformation was more than just structural. It was cultural. It was a philosophy, a rejection of the corporate games we used to play, a commitment to real, meaningful work that had purpose beyond just hitting numbers. My focus wasn't on managing clients anymore. It was about creating long-lasting relationships with them, rooted in authenticity and shared values. The office that had once been cold and sterile now hummed with life. People actually talked to each other, collaborating, sharing ideas. It was what I had always hoped for, what I had always dreamed of when I first started in this business. But it was also something deeper, a shift in the way we approach leadership. Instead of playing politics or sucking up to those with power, we empowered each other. We built something strong by building trust, and trust wasn't something you could buy with promises. It was earned. Clients were coming back, Monica Reeves, Valerie from Transmed Solutions, even Marissa from the biotech firm. They were seeing the difference, not just in how we operated, but in the way we treated them. It wasn't just about delivering a project on time anymore, it was about delivering value, and it was paying off. I stood in front of the full team during a meeting one afternoon, my hand resting on the lectern, feeling the weight of the moment. The room was filled with the faces of the people who had helped rebuild this company. They were no longer just employees. They were partners, collaborators, part of something bigger. I could feel the energy in the room, the electricity of people who believed in what they were doing. I was standing here, not as the person who had once been cast aside, but as the person who had finally built what I had always wanted. I looked out at the room and smiled. This is the first day of something new, I said, my voice steady, and I can't tell you how proud I am to stand here with all of you. There was applause, genuine and filled with pride. It wasn't just for me, it was for us. As I made my way back to my desk, I noticed a small framed photo on the corner. It was from my first day at Beckmore. It was just a few months ago, but it felt like a lifetime. I had been uncertain, unsure of myself, afraid of making the wrong move, but I had done it. I had taken that leap, and now I was standing in the company of a team that shared the same vision. I sat down and pulled up my emails, scanning for any important updates. One caught my eye. It was from Monica Reeves. Nora, we've decided to come back fully to Crestford, now that you're leading. We trust you and we believe in what you're doing. We want to make this partnership official. Let's discuss how we can expand our work together. I smiled as I read the message. It wasn't just a client coming back. It was proof that the values I had been fighting for were finally making a difference. The journey had only just begun, but the foundation was solid, built on something far more substantial than money or titles. It was built on the real work, the work that meant something to everyone involved. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of the journey behind me and the possibilities ahead. The future was wide open, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. The vision I had for this company, the one that had always seemed impossible, was now my reality, and it felt incredible. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was building. 6 months had passed since that pivotal moment when I took the reins at Crestford. The office was thriving, the culture was shifting, and everything I had worked for was slowly coming to fruition. But even as the company found its footing, I found myself standing at a crossroads I hadn't expected. I had spent so much time focusing on rebuilding the firm, on proving to myself and to others that I wasn't just a casualty of the corporate game, that I had neglected the personal part of the journey, the part that reminded me what it was all for. That's when Monica Reeves reached out, inviting me to dinner at her favorite restaurant, a quiet, intimate place in the city with candles flickering on every table and soft jazz playing in the background. It wasn't just a business dinner. She wanted to talk about the journey, about the lessons we had learned along the way. As I entered the restaurant, I saw Monica sitting at a corner table, already with a glass of wine in hand. She waved me over, her expression warm but thoughtful. "Glad you could make it, Nora," she said, her smile genuine. She motioned to the empty seat across from her. "I've been wanting to have a real conversation for a while now. It's been a wild ride, hasn't it?" I sat down, feeling a bit lighter just from her presence. Monica had always been someone who saw the bigger picture, someone who wasn't swayed by the fleeting trends of the business world. I knew she understood the journey I had gone through. It's been everything I needed it to be," I said, swirling the wine in my glass. "But I didn't expect it to be this hard. I thought that once we got things in motion, everything would just fall into place." Monica leaned in slightly, her voice lowering as if she were about to share a secret. "You know, Nora, we don't always get the luxury of things falling into place. Sometimes the work we do doesn't show its full value until years later. The legacy we leave behind is often a quiet one, but it's one that ripples through time in ways we don't even realize." I stared at her, feeling the weight of her words sink in. I've been so focused on fixing things, on getting the company back on track, that I haven't stopped to think about the bigger picture, the legacy. I don't know what that even looks like for me yet. Monica took a slow sip of her wine, letting the words hang in the air. "That's the thing about leadership, Nora. It's not just about building something that lasts. It's about creating something that matters, and that's what you're doing. You are what will carry this firm forward, because you've built something real. It's not just about the clients. It's about what you've created with them, with your team. You're not just rebuilding a company, you're reshaping an entire industry." Her words hit me harder than I expected. She was right, of course. I had spent so much time focusing on what was broken, on fixing everything I could see, that I had neglected the most important thing: why I was doing it. "It's funny," I said, my voice soft, reflective. "I spent so many years thinking my value was tied to the company, that if I wasn't at Crestford, I wasn't worth anything. But now I see that it was never about the company itself. It was always about the work I did, the relationships I built, the trust I earned." Monica smiled, a knowing, almost proud expression crossing her face. "Exactly. And now you're building something new, something authentic. You've set the stage for a culture that rejects the things we've both seen break companies down. You're not just following the path, you're creating it." I leaned back in my chair, the weight of her words settling in, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something akin to peace. The chaos, the struggle, the constant battle to prove my worth, it was all finally beginning to make sense. "I never thought I'd get here," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I'd just be another cog in the machine, but now I can see how I'm meant to shape it. And it's not about being the best or the most successful. It's about staying true to what I believe in, to the work that really matters." Monica raised her glass. "To staying true to yourself, Nora. To building a legacy that won't just be remembered, but felt." I clinked my glass with hers, the weight of everything I had built and was still building settling into my bones. It wasn't about the accolades, the recognition, or the power. It was about the people who believed in the work, the clients who trusted me, and the team I had brought together. It was about creating something that would live on beyond me, a foundation built on honesty, integrity, and authenticity. As we continued our dinner, the conversation shifted to future plans, new clients, potential expansions, and even personal goals. But the message stayed with me. The legacy I was building wasn't just in the work I did, but in how I did it. The way I treated the people around me, the way I led with purpose, the way I refused to compromise on what mattered. And when I finally walked out of the restaurant, the crisp night air wrapping around me, I felt something settle in my chest. I wasn't just part of the industry anymore. I was changing it. I was leaving a mark on it, and it was one that would be felt for years to come. As I drove home, I realized that this wasn't just the end of a chapter. It was the beginning of a new one where I would write my own story, not as someone defined by others' expectations, but as someone who created her own legacy. The true legacy wasn't just in the work I built, it was in the way it would continue after I was gone. And for the first time in a long time, I knew exactly what I wanted to leave behind.